So I've played Pirate101 quite a bit. I wouldn't even say quite a bit. I've played a lot. I've maxed, these 5 characters. I also had 2 other accounts where I maxed at least one of every class. So it's been about 15 characters. But in all of my time, my thousands of hours in Pirate101, there has been one character that has fascinated me, and that is Gortez. And to be more specific, there was one scene of him that piqued my interest so long ago and has only increased more. And that is in his monologue in the Valley of the Gold Monkey. And in this video, we're going to be going over a little bit of the themes and the motifs and kind of what he talks about in this monologue. There will be some comparisons to Star Wars Andor and some comparisons to our real world political climate. And this is a little bit of a different video, but I kind of want to blend my worlds together and make something like this. And the editing might be a little shoddy. This is a little different of a video for me, but I hope you enjoy. And to establish some sort of baseline for our flow here, we're going to first listen to the monologue in its entirety. So let's get started.
You're here. Are you an assassin? No. I'll tell you what you are. You're an organ grinder sent by circus clowns to make me do a dance. I refuse. The simpering fools at home, those tamed lapdogs, they have no right to judge me. They have no idea what I have found here. They'd refuse to see it. Look around you. The creatures that built these temples shattered mountains to raise their perfect pyramids. They drew gold down from the stars. They lived like titans, and now they're gone. But the trees remain. The jungle beat them. It will destroy us all unless we become one with it. The trees spoke to me and showed me the way. When I saw this place, shining gold, burning like fire, I knew who I was. I found the gold monkey. The fools in Puerto Rico think the gold monkey is another priceless toy for them to steal. They are wrong. The gold monkey is me. They want to stop me, but they are too good to make the trip themselves. Cowards. I will send them an answer. Your broken bones. Children!
When I first heard this monologue, I was like 12 years old. I didn't really know much about politics or the economy, but I did know that this speech was badass. But now that I'm a lot more involved in politics and have my own thoughts on the economy and the government, hearing this speech again was like opening an entire new door. And here in the first quarter of a new presidential year, I feel this speech is as relevant as ever, especially considering who is coming into office, and feel like this is a great time to talk about this. The interpretations that I've gotten from this speech may differ from the ones that you see, but there are a few connections I want to make between Gortez and characters like Andor and Nemik from Star Wars Andor, especially in regards to challenging Imperial authority, which we'll get to later, but now let's start with the first line.
You're here. Are you an assassin? No. I'll tell you what you are. You're an organ grinder sent by circus clowns to make me do a dance. I refuse.
This line is first and foremost a reference to Apocalypse Now, which has,
Are you an assassin? I'm a soldier. You're neither. You're an errand boy, sent by grocery clerks to collect a bill.
With Gortez being in part inspired by Colonel Kurtz as well as Hernan Cortez, this quote enacts a similar theme here. It challenges the authority and importance of those fulfilling this action. Errand boys ran a thankless job, and they were just simply put errand boys. That's where the term comes from. The Monkistan government set us up for this grandiose job to get Gortez back, dehumanizing our position of authority, which we don't have, in this larger conflict between Gortez and nature against the Monkistan government. The Apocalypse Now parallel being between the Vietnam and American forces. Moving on. The next line,
The simpering fools at home, those tamed lapdogs, they have no right to judge me. They have no idea what I have found here. they'd refuse to see it.
It's fairly simple. Gortez is drawing a parallel between him and the Monquisan government, calling out their hypocrisy for judging others. And this is something that we as the pirate experienced earlier in Puerto Rico. We see like 3 governors in our time, and because they all got marked as traitors. There's tons of corruption in their own local governments, and yet they cast judgment on Gortez. They hold their head high and proud. And this is where I want to make my first connection to Star Wars Andor, with Andor telling Luthen in Episode 3.
I'll give you another 1,000 credits to tell me how you got it.
Another 1,000.
Done. How?
You just walk in like you belong.
Takes more than that, doesn't it?
What, to steal from the Empire? What do you need? A uniform, some dirty hands, and an Imperial toolkit. They're so proud of themselves, they don't even care. They're so fat and satisfied, they can't imagine it.
Andor, despite not being fully radicalized yet, acknowledges that the all-powerful Empire won't look down to notice what you're actually doing. And ironically, this is also an Andor quote from Mon Mothma when talking about the Empire.
I've learnt from Palpatine. I show you the stone in my hand, you miss the knife at your throat.
In Pirate101, however, Gortez doesn't know it yet, but this is the seed of his own rebellion against the Monquisan government, which is something that Andor talks about as well. A major theme and motif in Andor is that everyone has their own rebellion, and this is something that we see in Gortez. Moving on. This next section switches gears to talk about nature, with Gortez saying,
Look around you. The creatures that built these temples shattered mountains to raise their perfect pyramids. They drew gold down from the stars. They lived like titans, and now they're gone. But the trees remain. The jungle beat them. It will destroy us all, unless we become one with it.
Gortez is referring to the Aztecans who had lived there previously and how they conquered the land, only for it to eventually beat them. And this is an interesting piece of the speech as it's pretty universal. Unsurprisingly, if you didn't know this, now you do, but industrialization, urban sprawl, cities, skyscrapers, it's all unnatural. They're not naturally occurring things. So when we see abandoned places, oftentimes what we notice first is the overgrowth, the way nature grasps and retakes the land that was taken from it. This is what Gortez is commenting on, acknowledging that of every empire, every regime to exist, the only thing that will remain after millennia is nature. This is also something briefly touched upon in Star Wars Andor, with Nemik stating in his manifesto.
And then remember this. The Imperial need for control is so desperate because it is so unnatural. Tyranny requires constant effort. It breaks. It leaks. Authority is brittle. Oppression is the mask of fear. Remember that.
While Gortez is talking about actual nature, as in like trees and grass, Nemik is referring to the nature of things, human nature, but they work one and the same. The existence of these overreaching governments like the Monquisan government and like the Star Wars Empire is unnatural. Gortez and his AWOL army are one of these leaks in the Monquisan government. The constant replacing of governors in Puerto Rico is this oppressive mask of fear. Hell, we even get marked to death in Monquista later in the story. Their authority is so brittle that the existence of us the pirate and Gortez challenges their established monarchy, which also has their own oligarchical influence with the noble houses. As stated on Pirate101.com, Monquista is ruled over by a king and queen. The power behind these thrones changes day to day, advised by the Holy Monquisition and presided over by the noble houses. Each faction seeks to advance its fortunes however it can. Every Monquistan is the member of a noble house. Monquista is obviously a parallel to the Spanish Empire, which started in the late 1400s. But while not blatantly oligarchical, as we're experiencing more today in the United States, the Monquisan Empire only acts in the interest of capital, no matter the conditions of their working class. Now, this section has been long-winded, but suffice to say that empirical powers are not natural, with Gortez recognizing this and choosing to succumb to nature, being one with it. Moving on. This is, however, where we start to see the fallacy in Gortez and his ideology, with him stating,
The trees spoke to me and showed me the way. When I saw this place, shining gold, burning like fire, I knew who I was. I found the gold monkey. The fools in Puerto Rico think the gold monkey is another priceless toy for them to steal. They are wrong. The gold monkey is me.
Now don't get me wrong, Gortez is not a good person. Yes, he aids the resistance and the pirate and overthrows the Monquisa monarchy, but he is still an oppressive military leader and tyrant. He's a tyrant as the gold monkey, believing he's a paragon of enlightenment, this holy grail that shows the path of his followers. And this can be seen in the way they talk about him. They talk about him as if he is a king. He acts as if he is a king on a throne of gold, speaking of audiences with a makeshift crown on his head. And to continue on this topic of enlightenment, there's also a hint of idealization. Gortez held the Aztecans on a podium, referring to them as titans. And he holds himself up to this titan status as the gold monkey, showering in shining gold. He continues with this even after the Civil War when he becomes king. He remains a king. And granted, we don't know enough of what happens after the Civil War, which this could be further explored in later arcs and books if we ever get that kind of main story content. But for the most part, the Monquisan government doesn't really change. There is reason to suggest, however, that the conditions of the common Monquisan has improved with Gortez, and especially with the Queen Eleanor in power, but unfortunately we just don't know enough yet to dive deeper on this aspect. And the other side of this part of the monologue is when he refers to Puerto Rico believing the golden monkey is a priceless toy for them to steal. Now this portion is brief, but it relates back to Monquista as an oppressive government, monopolizing any and everything they can, dominating lands, and the incessant need to own every means of capital that they can. And Gortez was responsible for many of these victories of the Monquisan government, aiding the ushering of their golden age and giving them territory, dominance, and possessions. Moving on. The final section of this monologue is fairly simple. It concludes with,
They want to stop me, but they are too good to make the trip themselves. Cowards. I will send them an answer. Your broken bones. Children!
To me, this last line anchors back to one point and establishes another. The anchor point is Gortez calling out Monquista and Puerto Rico for not making the trip themselves. This ties back to Monquista being too proud to look down on anything that's not themselves, the same observation that Andor makes about the Empire from Star Wars. The new point that Gortez establishes is this cycle of violence. He claims himself as an almighty enlightened individual, but reduces himself to this barbaric expression of violence as a means of communication, which makes sense given his military experience and background. He's a victim of his conditions under the Monquisa monarchy, with the Pirate101 wiki saying, seeking glory and to escape the irritations of the noble houses, he joined up with the Monquistadors. While at a certain point violence is the only language we understand, it sets a precedent for Gortez's rule as a king after the Civil War, which again, we don't know much about as this part of his story isn't explored that much in Pirate101 after his arc ends. And that really covers the monologue. I will say, I haven't done any side quests in Monquista, but after writing the script for this and researching more into Monquista and the Spanish Empire even, I'm kind of curious to see what kind of things happen and are referenced in those side quests. If there's substance in those side quests, I might make an additional video or include it in my series after the Privateer Reading Dialogue series, where I read all the dialogue and side quests for each world and see if there's any overarching arcs or anything like that that you may have missed in all these side quests. If you enjoy this kind of thing, let me know. I may make more. I'm really just making what I feel like, and I had this on my mind for a while, and I was going to release it maybe in like mid-February, but after Inauguration Day and sort of where I believe this country will go, I think this was a good time to talk about this and talk about Gortez and his sort of themes in his speech. But yeah, I hope you guys have a good day, and I will see you next time.